I met a man through someone I thought was a good friend at a party. Turns out she just loved to drink and was in with some questionable people. There was this guy named Tom. He seemed nice enough. Charming, handsome, and somewhat intelligent. My friend tried to set me up with him, but I wasn't interested. I was the designated driver and was driving my friend home. She invited Tom to come with us even though I had no desire to bring him home, which would have been very much out of my way. But I was too nice to directly say no, so we all got in my car. I tried to drop him off first, but he was being very vague and wanted to go for a drive instead. Red flag, I know. My friend was adamant about going home, so I felt forced to drop her off first. Boy, was I a young, silly woman. I dropped off my friend and ended up in what I thought was a nice conversation. He was talking about his ambitions and dreams. Something about wanting to work at Disney as an animator or something. Eventually I get it out of him where I can drop him off. I remember it being a strange location but thought nothing more about it. A few days later I was in our basement at home on the family computer. The days of MSN Messenger and LimeWare. It was late at night and my back was towards all the windows because of the location of the desk. I hear my big brother leave the house to drive his girlfriend home. A few minutes later, the hair on my back stands up as I hear tapping at the basement window. I furiously messaged some of my friends on MSN telling them what was going on. I was frozen in fear and didn't know what to do. I didn't want to turn around to potentially see a maniac face framed in the window. My parents were 2 floors up asleep and I couldn't yell out at them to wake me up without alerting whoever was at the window. The person tapped at every window of the basement. I prayed it was my brother playing a trick on me. To get to those windows, the person would have had to walk up our driveway, through our gate, and half around the house in our backyard. It must have lasted a half hour or longer. Multiple taps on the window and it felt like it was never gonna stop. It was horrifying and I was terrified. What if it wasn't my brother and he forgot to lock the door when he left? I didn't know what to do. I stayed in my chair until a good hour went by with no noise before I bolted to my bedroom and locked the door. I stayed awake until I heard my brother come home. The next day I asked my brother about it. He looked worried and very confused when I explained what happened. He adamantly refused having played a trick on me, saying he left immediately with his girlfriend. My mom and dad heard the entire story too. Dad went into full-blown cop mode, interrogating me with fatherly concern. It came out that I met the guy Tom. My dad stopped cooking breakfast and looked intently at me, asking if it was Tom Smith. I confirmed yes. He immediately informed me that I was never to speak to that person again and to cut all ties. He was well known to the police as being a peeping Tom and having committed breaking and enterings too. My dad suspected it was Tom scouting our place and trying to get my attention when he saw me alone after my brother left. Apparently my friend told him my phone number and address after that party. I've since cut all ties with her as well. So peeping Tom named Tom. I know we'll never meet again since I'm pretty sure you're in jail. Let's keep it that way. So this happened to our neighborhood when I was about 10, I would say. We lived in a super nice subdivision on a ridge near a marina. The houses were not all right on top of each other due to how the land was, and our house was one of the ones that was not right next to the other houses. Our house backed up to a lot of woods that I used to play in. Our neighborhood was plagued one year by a peeping Tom. My mom had talked to some neighbors and several people had noticed a guy creeping about in backyards or looking in windows, etc. One neighbor had said she and her husband had another couple over for dinner, and when the ladies went out in the backyard down to the woodpile to get more firewood, they noticed a man standing just inside the woods staring at them. They ran to get their husbands, but he was gone at that point. So we were on the lookout. One night I was in bed and my bed was opposite the window in my room. Our house was mostly all on ground level, but my bedroom window was higher from the ground. However, there was a little ledge there under the window. I used to use that ledge to climb in and out of the window for fun. I even put a slider under the window once and would slide out the window. So one night I'm in bed and I wake up for some reason. I look at the window and notice that the floodlights were on in the backyard, and I clearly saw the outline of a man's shoulder and head in the window. like he was standing on that ledge trying to look in. I scream and go get my parents, and of course he is gone by the time they get there. My mom tended to believe me, but my dad said I just dreamed it. I made my dad search the entire huge house though before I would go back to sleep. The reports came in from neighbors that the boats down at the marina were getting broken into. My guess is said Peeping Tom was breaking into the boats for food or to sleep, etc. Well, it all came to a head one night, and lucky us, we were the family that got the worst of it. Our house was like one level on the top and then had a basement. Well, the master bedroom had these huge windows that went all the way to the ground. They could even be opened and just have the screen. You would just turn the handle and they opened out. My parents were pretty lax in security, and if the weather was nice, they would leave the windows open while they slept. So my dad was gone at night, which was not abnormal for him. He was gone at night a lot, which perhaps Peeping Tom knew if he had been watching us. My mom was asleep in her bed, which was right next to those big fold-out windows which were open. She likes to sleep with the TV on, so she said she kept hearing leaves crunching and she thought it must have been something on the TV. Then she finally realizes the sound is coming from outside the window, literally like a foot and a half away. She jumped out of the bed and ran and turned on the floodlights out front, and there in that window was the outline of a man. Literally all that guy had to do was kick in the screen and step into the house. It was that simple. We did have an alarm system, so my mom runs and hits the panic button and the alarms go off. She said the guy bolted. I was asleep in my bed while this was all going on and wake up to hearing the alarm and the cops arriving shortly after. The cops were too lazy to go into the woods looking for him. He ran into those woods behind our house. They did take an unmarked car though and drive around to the other side of the woods to see if they could catch him when he came out the other side, but of course they never found him. But maybe the guy almost getting caught was enough for him, because after that night, the Peeping Tom wasn't seen again in our neighborhood. I suppose he moved on, but not before he literally scared the living daylights out of my mother and me. The lesson this incident has taught me is I never sleep with the windows open. Ever. And neither should you. I was a junior in high school back in 2007. I had just gotten home from being out with two of my guy friends who recently went off to college that year. It was probably 8 p.m. when we got back to my house. It was almost completely dark outside. When I pulled into the driveway, my mom caught me in the garage and asked if I knew the guy sitting in a silver SUV across the street from our house. I told her no, but she kept questioning me about it because she said this guy had been sitting in his car for over an hour and kept pretending to shuffle through the things in his car whenever my mom caught him looking towards our house. Again, I told her I had no idea who that was, but we were going to make some popcorn and go inside to watch a movie downstairs. I should note that we lived on the first tee of a golf course, so we were right next to the putting green. Across the street from our house was the 9th hole, so we only had one neighbor to the right of us before you could drive down into the subdivision. We go downstairs and start up a movie. We've been home for about an hour or so when my friend asks, "Did you see that?" I was like, "See what?" He was like, "I think I just saw something move outside the window." We had ground level windows that ran the entire length of the basement. I brushed it off because I remember my mom saying something about growing a rose bush in the backyard. My friend was like, "No, that's a person. I just saw a phone light up." My two friends immediately run up the stairs and yell at my parents to call 911 because someone has been watching us. The guys go running outside and find the guy who had been watching us. He had run behind our neighbor's house and my friends caught him with his hands up in the middle of the street. The silver SUV was gone. My friends had asked him what he was doing, but the guy just started running toward the 9th hole of the golf course. He ran behind our big/stone neighborhood sign where his silver SUV was now parked. At that point, my friends hop in their car and they dial 911. My mom runs over to the putting green trying to get his license plate number. He almost hits my mom with his car before flying out of our neighborhood. He makes a left-hand turn to get on the highway. He's in such a hurry to get away that he turned onto oncoming traffic. He stayed on the wrong side of the highway and dodged cars for a while before he finally sped through the grass median and got on the right side of the highway. He pulls into a gas station in the next town over. My friends pull into a hotel parking lot across the highway/main road that runs through the town and watch him. 911 tells them that they're on the way. The guy then begins taunting my friends from the gas station. 911 tells them to stay put and not get out of the car, and the police finally arrive after a few minutes. The guy once again tries to run. They finally corner him against a dumpster behind the gas station. They start to question him, and the guy won't give up any information to the police. They can't get a name, address, reason as to why he's here and what he's been doing. They're finally able to get a warrant and are able to search his car, cell phone, etc. He lives in Kansas City, which is about 3.5 hours away from here. They also find large black 55-gallon trash bags, rope, tape, and medical equipment in his car. The police check his phone, and he had erased everything from his phone and called the same number over 20 times in the 10-minute drive to the next town. The cops asked him what he was doing behind our house, and he tells them that he sells medical equipment and that his ex-girlfriend used to live at our house 4 to 5 years ago. But we built our house a little over a year before this happened. 4 to 5 years before, the golf course wasn't even there. It was just a field. All I remember after that was a police officer looking incredibly defeated and taking off his hat to greet my parents. He said it would probably be better if I didn't hear what happened, and no one told me until I was well into college. Basically, there was nothing they could do. The cops didn't believe his story or anything that he said, but since he didn't have a record, they couldn't hold him. They didn't have any hard evidence of wrongdoing. They said if he ever gets caught doing something like this again, he could face charges, but there was nothing that could be done at that point in time. The only thing the cops did recommend was that my parents keep a close eye on my social media because anyone can see your profile. So after that happened, I've always been careful of what I post on the internet, and I always watch my surroundings. I have no idea what that guy's intention was or if he had the wrong house, but that night still sticks with me to this day. The thing that scares me the most is that I've had someone a few times over the years try to follow me on Facebook and Instagram. It always looked like a fake profile though, but you can never be sure. I block him and carry on. But I always wonder if the same guy is checking up on me ever so often. Whenever I tell my friends this story, I always tell them that if I go missing, it will be him. Growing up, I lived in a small town an hour or so outside a big city. It was quiet, many farms, and a few nice cul-de-sac with beautiful villas. There were 15 villas on the road my parents bought a house on. I was 2 and had my very own room secured for future use. My bigger sister Emily got the larger room, of course. It was a 1-story house with a basement turned TV room, master bedroom, and laundry room. But even though I was on the first floor, you couldn't see into my room without a chair or anything else to stand on. I felt safe. My room was located at the front of the house. Emily's room was facing the other way with a window out towards the backyard. Under my window was a little patio with garden furniture, 2 chairs, sofa, and a table. We spent many summer days there eating ice cream. As the years went by, the furniture came in handy for Emily, who had a habit of going to bed early and then sneaking out through her window to meet friends. As she couldn't get back in through her own window, she would bully me into keeping mine ajar so that she would be able to sneak back into my room when the time came and she was ready to come home. I believe I was 13 and she 16 at the time. I was a heavy sleeper, so it never bothered me. I'd rather just stay out of it all and turn a blind eye. One summer evening I did wake up, and when she finally came home, I could hear her fidgeting around outside on the patio. As tired as I was, I turned around and went back to sleep, and hearing my dad's heavy footsteps up the stairs from the master bedroom, I assumed something big was about to take place. Better stay out of it. But no argument came. The shuffle outside stopped and I drifted back to sleep, not thinking more about it. What happened in the morning scares me to this day. My mom wakes me up to ask me if I heard anything out of the ordinary during the night. Not wanting to rat my sister out, I said, "No, why?" She takes me to the patio, and on top of the white table are 2 massively muddy footprints. Way too big to belong to a 16-year-old girl. After that night, I never left my window open again, angry sister or not. I don't want to meet the man who stood outside my window in the middle of the night. I can only assume my dad's nightly cigarette on the back porch scared him off, and I'm incredibly thankful for that. So here's some backstory on my place and myself. I had moved into my own apartment from my parents' house with my cat about 8 months prior, and I was happy as could be. I spent countless hours just lounging around my place, cleaning, decorating, making it my home. This apartment was a basement apartment, which meant that my windows were ground level. I had pretty awesome neighbors. The older Asian lady upstairs became a fast friend and was the mother figure around the place. My other upstairs neighbor was a guy my age, and we quickly became friends as well. My neighbors across the hall were a little more off-putting, whereas I would frequently hear the couple arguing loudly and slamming doors, and the hallway between us was always filled with a weird earthy smoke. The man of the couple across the hallway always took an opportunity to make crude and inappropriate comments towards me, which I always brushed off because, let's face it, when you're a woman you get used to it. Until one night when things got really creepy. Now, our apartments had 2 entrances, a front door and a back hallway door. The front door was to connect to the front parking lot, whereas the back hallway door just led into a dark alleyway behind the building, an area no one should frequent. So on this particular night when I got home, it was already close to midnight. I headed straight into my bedroom to get undressed. I should tell you now that my bedroom window faces the back alleyway, and I had my blinds shut almost all the way. They were maybe open half a foot and the window was cracked to let the breeze in. After I got undressed, I walked around a bit, straightening up, and then headed to the bathroom to wash up for bed. As I stood there brushing my teeth, my cat came tearing out of my room and spun in the hallway to look into my room with her back puffed and growling. Not knowing what could make her do this, I peeked around the corner into the bedroom and didn't see anything. I noticed I couldn't see out the window since the light was on and there was a glare, so I flicked it off. In that moment, I saw the outline of a man crouched outside my window, low and close enough so that he could see through the 6 inches of glass that were exposed along the ground. I panicked and dropped to the ground, unable to move and not knowing what to do. Here I am, a 21-year-old girl living alone with her cat, no protection, and there is a man crouched in a dark alleyway behind my house. I crawled across the floor to where my phone was and repeatedly tried to call the guy I was seeing to come to my house. He didn't pick up and I finally gave up calling. I heard leaves rustling outside and all of a sudden I heard my crude neighbor from across the hall outside with a flashlight yelling, "Who's out there?" After a few minutes go by, he came back inside and started knocking on my door. I jumped up and threw some clothes on and went to open my door. When I opened the door, he looked at me and asked me if I had been hearing someone outside and that he had been hearing someone previously the past couple of nights. I said I had and that I caught him looking in the window. After he left, grumbling about the lack of security, I ran upstairs to knock on my neighbor's doors upstairs. Anything so I didn't have to be alone. Neither of them answered. I went back downstairs, shut and locked all my windows, and took a can of wasp spray I had and sat in bed all night listening and watching for any signs of a stalker. The next morning, I went and talked to my upstairs neighbor and told her what happened. She was pissed. She had taken the habit of calling me daughter and definitely felt protective of me. This lady had to be 4'9" and 100 pounds soaking wet. She then proceeded to accuse the man across the hall of doing it and telling me she always knew he wasn't right. That's when I put it together. Why would he knock on my door at 12 a.m. knowing full well it was a work week if he thought I was sleeping? All the lights were off. At this time, it was still pretty hot at night and I felt trapped in my own house. I used to love sleeping with my windows open and fan on, and now I had to suffer every night in a stuffy house because I was afraid of leaving anything open and unlocked. I never did confront my neighbor, but I did tell my landlord what happened, and he came and installed a motion light in the alley. But it wasn't enough. I felt violated. How many other times had this happened and I didn't notice? Why should I have to hole myself up every night in my own home out of fear? I ended up breaking my lease early and leaving. And to this day, I will not sleep in a bedroom on the first floor. This took place in November of 2007 during my junior year of high school in my hometown. I lived in a small Midwestern city that, in all honesty, seemed completely safe. One night, my 2 friends and I were hanging out at my house in the living room. We stopped by my house after we had gone to a local coffee shop, but we wanted to leave again to get late night Jimmy John's. I'll try to paint a picture of my living room to the best of my abilities. The couch was against our front windows facing the inactive fireplace. There was a small nook right next to the fireplace that held a large plush green chair. The chair faced the front windows and was directly next to our entertainment center. My house had 2 main entrances, the front door and the side door. The first floor of our house was basically one long hallway, each room leading to the other through large archways and no doors. On this night in particular, my friends and I decided to watch TV before heading out again. It was around midnight. I was sitting in the green chair and my friends were laying on the couch facing me. I could tell the other 2 were falling asleep and I decided to rest my eyes as well. A few moments later, my cat burst into the room and up the stairs. I didn't think much of it as she was a skittish cat, so I shut my eyes again. The next thing I know, I hear my friend whispering my name over and over. I turned my head towards her and she was pointing in the direction of my dining room. From my point of view, I couldn't see the entrance to the dining room as I was tucked into the nook by the fireplace. My friend was persistent and her voice grew louder and louder until I decided I couldn't avoid looking. I scooted up to the very edge of the seat, peered over, and holy shit. A man was standing there. He was scrawny and short and wore a ski mask, and that's it. This dude was completely and utterly naked, and he just stood there completely calm, taking turns at staring at each of us. I could also see he was carrying a bundle under his arm. We all looked at each other for a few beats. My mind was racing. What the fuck was happening? Was this a joke? Should we charge him? What if he was carrying a gun or a knife? After those brief moments were over, we all started screaming. I don't think I've ever screamed so loud in my fucking life. I took off towards the stairs, and as I reached them and looked back, I saw him calmly turn and walk back towards the dining room. We reached my parents' room, flung ourselves in, and barricaded the door. My parents woke up in a panic as we all started screaming about what had just taken place. The calmest of the 3 of us managed to call 911, and within 20 minutes they arrived. They took our individual statements and searched the property. One cop came back inside after searching our property and the surrounding neighborhood. He told us that there were distinct footprints in the frost directly in front of our living room windows. They said that he must have been standing there for hours trying to get our attention, and out of frustration he entered our house after those failed attempts. We stupidly left the door unlocked because we assumed we'd be leaving soon after arriving. I honestly have no idea if they ever caught this man. When I was still living in my hometown, I would be at a random store and think I saw him because honestly I remember his goddamn eyes so well. They were completely devoid of any emotion. So creepy, naked, peeping Tom, I hope we never, ever meet again.